Varan, or as it's known here in the States, Varan the Unbelievable, is one of the worst kaiju films that Toho ever made. Sure, they've made some stinkers over the years, but Varan hardly even qualifies as a movie. But instead of this video being an angry takedown of an obscure B-movie from 1958, I instead want to treat this video as an autopsy of sorts, to see what went wrong and why. It's honestly difficult to rip into a movie like this, just because there were so many hurdles in the way of even making it good. A lot of that has to do with the fact that the production of Varan is less a story of artistic ambition than it is of commercial compromise. It started not as a theatrical feature, but as a co-production between Toho and an American television company, Associated Broadcasting Production Television, which had recently entered into a deal to bring Japanese content to the American small screen. The idea was simple: create a new kaiju film that was shot in 1.33 to 1 ratio, or 4:3, and in black and white to suit American TV standards. Ishiro Honda and Eiji Tsuburaya, already seasoned veterans after the success of Godzilla and Rodan, were brought in to lend their movie monster expertise. The screenplay was originally written by Ken Kuronuma, who wrote Rodan. It was a mix of recycled tropes and vague ethnographic ideas, using a remote mountain village as the setting for a creature awakening. However, the whole thing fell apart very quickly. ABPT Pictures shut down in the middle of pre-production, pulling out of the project entirely. Now stuck with a half-formed movie intended for television, Toho tried its best to salvage what they could by reformatting the film for Japanese theatrical release. The film was retrofitted, it was cropped to a widescreen ratio, and it was slightly reworked, but not substantially improved by any means. The result was a bizarre hybrid. Essentially, it was a TV movie that was masquerading as a theatrical release. The budget was very, very small, especially by Toho standards. Honda and Tsuburaya did what they could with the scraps they had, but the rushed nature of the production and the limited resources are very much felt in nearly every frame. The film was quietly released in Japan in 1958. Years later, in 1962, it was then picked up and radically altered for American audiences, with new footage featuring Western actors inserted, and almost all original Japanese scenes with the humans were cut. The same thing was done to the original Godzilla film from 1954, where they inserted American actor Raymond Burr. However, those changes, in my opinion, were done just a little bit better, since they actually used the Japanese scenes and the Japanese actors, and they just sort of put Raymond Burr in honestly some really clever edits. Here, they just almost entirely cut out all the Japanese stuff. This version of the film was titled Varan the Unbelievable. It bears even less resemblance to the original vision, whatever that might have even been. The film follows a group of scientists investigating mysterious deaths in a remote mountain village near the Kitakami River. The locals blame the disasters on the ancient mountain god Baradagi. When scientists arrive, they disturb the ecosystem and awaken the sleeping creature, a massive gliding reptile later named Varan. The kaiju emerges from the lake and begins a slow crawl towards civilization, with occasional skirmishes involving the military. He resists their efforts to destroy him, swims out to Tokyo Bay, and eventually perishes after ingesting a chemical explosive. The film ends with Varan sinking into the ocean, presumably dead. This is a movie that barely holds itself together, and that's precisely why it's just so hard to hate. It's not inept in the way that makes a movie laughable, it's just simply the victim of bad circumstance. You can feel the stress behind every creative decision, the way the film stretches its few usable shots of Varan across a dull, dialogue-heavy runtime. I mean, let's be real, this is a boring film. The pacing is slow and stagnant. The human characters serve no memorable function, either as emotional anchors or vehicles for a theme. They're here to buy time until the monster shows up. And when he finally does, Varan really doesn't have much to do beyond floating ominously or shrugging off missiles. The script never seems interested in giving him a personality or a purpose. Still, there's a flicker, just a tiny flicker, of the thematic undertones that Honda is known for as a director. The idea of science disrupting ancient ecosystems and unleashing forgotten horrors is there. This echoes Godzilla's nuclear warnings and Rodan's nature revenge motif. But where those earlier films wove their themes through well-developed characters and a sense of urgency, Varan delivers them through dry exposition and sluggish execution. One could argue that Varan himself represents the dangers of modern society, infringing on cultural and ecological boundaries, especially considering how the mountain god motif is discarded by the scientific worldview, but the film doesn't really do much with that idea. It just sort of introduces it and then lets it evaporate. As for the monster, Varan, it's kinda cool. He's got a sleek design somewhere between a lizard and a flying squirrel, and the gliding effect, while kinda goofy, was at least an attempt at innovation. But none of that matters if the creature has no meaningful screen presence. Varan doesn't fight another monster, doesn't even inspire awe. He just kind of exists and then dies. It's genuinely strange that this movie came from the same team behind Godzilla and Rodan. Honda and Tsuburaya had already proven that they could take wild, even goofy premises and ground them in a sense of awe, tragedy, or wonder, but here there's just no spark, and that comes across throughout the entire runtime. The film feels flat not because the concept is inherently weaker, but because no one seemed invested in lifting it. That detachment makes sense when you look at the circumstances and how Honda and Tsuburaya weren't given a strong foundation in the first place. They were just handed the pieces of a broken co-production and were asked to build something passable in order to somehow churn a profit. I mean, there was literally no time or budget for reinvention, only patchwork. What had started as a TV special for the US ended up in Japanese theaters, barely modified and barely functioning. Varan plays like the obligation it became. There's no shame in that. It happens to talented directors all the time, like George Lucas or Steven Spielberg, but it's hard not to imagine the much better version of Varan that this film absolutely could have been, if the production had stayed on track or if the team had been given the room to start over. Instead, we get a film that never really figures out what it wants to say or how to say it. Everyone involved had done better before, and would do better again. This just wasn't the moment. Now, the version of Varan that most people have seen, at least that I'm aware of, is the American cut, which was released in 1962. It's the easiest version to find on streaming platforms, and it shows up often in physical media releases. Toho has largely let this version represent the film internationally. The original Japanese cut has received very little attention, with no major restorations with Criterion or Arrow, and there haven't really been any wide releases outside of Japan, and no serious effort to preserve its place in their catalog. Sure, the movie's bad, and I don't personally like it, but I think every movie deserves to be released on physical media and streaming to some degree. The American version replaces most of the original film with new scenes starring American actors. The story is restructured around a military scientist named Jim Bradley and his wife. It turns what was already a slow and uneven film into something even more disjointed. Honda's footage is reduced to background material, while the new scenes try to create a narrative that never really connects to what's left of the original. The American actors do a decent job with the material that they're given. Their performances aren't really the issue, but the problem is that the movie doesn't really hold together. It's two different projects awkwardly edited into one. The result is flat and repetitive, with even less momentum than the Japanese version. Toho has never really revisited this version with much interest, but they also haven't done much to recover the original. As a result, the 1962 cut has become the default, not because it's better or more faithful, but because it's the one that was exported and made available. Like, you can buy it used on Amazon for like $8. Whether you watch the Japanese or American version, you're still watching a movie that just doesn't work. And in the end, Varan the Unbelievable isn't bad because of incompetence. It's bad because it never really had a chance to be anything else. It's the cinematic equivalent of an abandoned prototype, shuffled off into theaters to recoup losses. You can't be mad at it, you just feel sorry for it. Honestly, Varan deserved more. A proper debut, a story worth telling, and a monster moment that would earn him a spot alongside Godzilla and Mothra. Instead, he got maybe 10 minutes of screen time and a footnote in Kaiju history. It's a film that I have almost no affection for, but my apathy isn't rooted in pure hatred. Like, you're not gonna see me take a dump on the DVD like I'm the angry video game nerd. Instead, my dislike for the film is in the understanding that this was a doomed project from the start. Honda and Tsuburaya made a career of bringing wonder to the screen, and this simply wasn't the environment where that could flourish. Varan's legacy is less about what he did and more about what he could have been. And with all of that out of the way, I'm Cole McCormick, you're watching Firewood Media. Big thank you to our channel members for making videos like these possible. Their names are listed right here on screen. wherever I put them, left or right, I don't know. For $1.99 a month, the executive producer tier gives you loyalty badges, custom emojis, early access to new videos, like this one, exclusive members-only content, and occasional shoutouts. You also get your name in the credits of every film project that I make. Because if you're supporting it, you're producing it. Either way, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.